Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NPU Family Talk. Now, we have a lot to discuss this evening, but before we open up any conversations or do anything, I want to bring on our national president. Carrie is a fierce warrior for our families, our parents, our children. And if you haven't watched the news, of course, there's so much that's happening. But there was a tragedy that we all are being impacted by that happened here in the United States on today. So I'm going to bring on our national president right at this moment, because we want to start off by making sure that we acknowledge this tragedy, and most importantly, are sending our heartfelt condolences and prayers to our fellow Americans. So Carrie, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I'm the president of the National Parents Union, but my most important job is being Matthew, Miles, and David's mom. And I just want to start us off tonight by saying, I'm showing up tonight the same way that every single one of you is showing up. As a parent who's sitting here watching the news, trying to hold it all together, trying to get to a championship basketball game, at the same time wondering what the hell we're supposed to say to our kids in these moments. And that's the honest truth of where we are right now. And I need to start there with today, because we cannot pretend that these past few hours haven't happened. Today, a man rammed his vehicle into Temple, Israel, one of the largest Reform synagogues in the country, in West Bloomfield, Michigan. He drove through the doors. He had a rifle. He was in what appeared to be, carrying a whole large amount of explosives in the back of his vehicle. There were children inside that building. And 140 students and staff are safe tonight because security were able to do their job. They're actually briefing the press right now as we speak. But also today, a gunman stormed into a classroom at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and asked if it was an ROTC class, and then opened fire when somebody confirmed that it was. At least one person is dead. The FBI is investigating that as an act of terrorism. And that suspect had previously been convicted of attempting to provide material support to ISIS. So that's 2 attacks. That's just one afternoon, one on a synagogue with children inside, and on college students in a classroom. And those aren't the only ones. What we have watched happen in Austin 2 weeks ago, a shooting at a bar that killed 3 people and wounded 14 more, being investigated for links to the Iran war. We watch ISIS-inspired attackers throw IEDs outside the mayor's residence in New York City just a few days ago, targeting people on the street. So that's 4 attacks on American soil in the span of just 2 weeks. And this is on our streets, at our schools, at our places of worship. And again, I'm a mother first, and I'm telling you, as a mother, this is not normal. We should not be sitting here trying to figure out how to explain this to our kids tonight. We should not be the generation of parents who got used to this. We're 12 days into a war, and the violence doesn't seem to be staying overseas. We're living through a moment that no parenting ever prepared us for. There's a military conflict abroad that our children are watching unfold in real time on their phones. There are enforcement actions happening in our neighborhoods that are keeping kids home from school, and families afraid to go to the doctor because ICE might show up. Prices are up. Trust is down. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, we're all still packing lunches. We're helping with homework. We're trying to convince a teenager that, yes, they do need to go to bed. American parents, though, we're tired, and we're not imagining it. But I need you to know something else from us at the National Parents Union. We are not standing still. Last week, we were in Washington, D.C., standing alongside parents whose children had been hurt and exploited, or worse, because this country has failed to protect kids online. Parents who have buried children, parents who have handed their kid a phone and never imagined that it would become a weapon turned against them. stood with them to demand that Congress stop treating our kids like a data product and start treating them like human beings who deserve protection from the predatory forces of social media and AI. That fight is not over, and we're not going anywhere. And just yesterday, we were back in Washington, and we were standing with members of the United States Senate, celebrating something that took real work, our collective push to fight back against the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. That's been lawsuits, congressional advocacy, parents showing up and refusing to let programs and funding that let our kids have access to free and appropriate public education continue. And we're not going to allow that to be stripped away without a fight. 2 weeks in a row, different battles, same parents fighting the same mission, because that is what this organization does. We're not going to wait for somebody to come and save us. We show up, we organize, and we fight in the courts, in the halls of Congress, and right here in conversations like this one. Here at the National Parents Union, we represent 1.8 million families across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And what our families are telling us consistently, loudly, across every zip code and every party line, Democrats, Republicans alike, is that this country has its priorities completely backwards. We spend more time debating politics than protecting children. We treat parent voices like background noise instead of the most important signal in the room. And we make decisions that affect kids every single day without ever asking the people who are raising them. And that ends with us. NPU was built on one idea, that parents organized are parents with power. And tonight is about exactly that. Not just talking about what's happening to our families, but figuring out what the hell we're going to do about it. Because here's what I know about parents. We do not quit. We adapt, we push, we fight. That's not inspiration. That's a Tuesday. So let me tell you what we're fighting for. NPU's Kids First agenda comes down to 4 things that every child in this country deserves and every parent should be able to count on. Education that actually works. Not schools that just warehouse kids, but schools that teach them to read, to think, to compete, and to thrive, no matter what their zip code is, no matter what their family income is. Economic security for the families who are actually raising these kids, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. When 43% of parents tell us their financial situation is getting worse every single day, that's not a personal failure. That's a policy failure. And we need leaders who will say that out loud and do something about it. Basic health, physical, mental, emotional, and for our kids to be able to have parents who are also healthy, because anxiety is climbing in our children and in all of us as the grown-ups trying to run our households. Burnout is so very real right now. And a country that claims to care about kids, but cuts supports keeping families stable, is lying to our faces. And safety, real safety, the #1 priority for American families. And this has been true. We have the longest running national poll of parents in America. And I can tell you from the day that we created this poll that asked the question, what's important to you? Keeping our kids safe has been #1. And not the kind of safety that looks good in a press release, but the kind where a child can walk into a school in the morning and a parent can breathe, instead of worrying about whether or not ICE is going to show up on their playground and whether or not their school bus is going to be filled with tear gas on the way home. The kind where we're not afraid to go to a parent-teacher conference or to a church service or a synagogue because of who might show up. The kind where our kids don't receive an active shooter alert on their phones while sitting in a college classroom. That's the agenda. That's what we're here for. So I'm sorry I'm a little fired up tonight, but I think tonight we really need to have a real conversation about how all 4 of those things are under pressure right now. From what is happening at the border, to what's happening in our neighborhoods, to what's happening overseas, to what's happening at the kitchen table when a parent looks at their bank account and has to make choices that no family should ever have to make. And I want you to know, we're not trying to scare you, but we're also not going to spin to you. We are here to fight alongside you, to do something about this. Because 1.8 million families showing up together, that's not a crowd, that is a movement. And we need to get to work. So Jason and Christy, I want to welcome you back on. Sorry I'm talking in paragraphs tonight.
No, this was a perfect way to start us off. And as so many of us are on the front lines advocating for our children, please remember, everyone, that the attack on American childhood is real. Now, I want you all to visit the nationalparentsunion.org, check out this report, then get connected to our movement. We have some powerful leaders you're going to hear from on this evening. Our Parent Power Collective is represented. I also see them in the comments and a lot of people viewing on YouTube, which is great. Super excited about that. Thank you, everyone, for being connected to any of the live streaming platforms this evening. Carrie, I also, while you're on here, have to highlight that this week I attended the Charter School Conference for Georgia, and hearing from so many principals, leaders from across the state that are so concerned about attendance. Their students are not showing up, and to see the heartbreak in principals who have students who are missing, because unfortunately the ICE raids in our communities are real. And I want that to sit with people, because oftentimes we're not seeing in the media the vast number of children that are coming up missing in our country. We are truly in a crisis. And again, the National Parents Union is here to bring you facts, but we also are here to call you to action. So make sure that you know there is hope in all of this.
Jason, I got to jump in because you know, I like to keep it real, and I want folks who are listening into this conversation to hear directly from me, like a person who has been on the ground in Minnesota, has been on the ground in Washington, D.C., has gone to so many schools, has talked to so many school leaders. But again, I'm also a mama. I'm a mama of big brown boys, and I live 3.5 miles from the biggest ICE facility, the biggest headquarters in New England. And there are days when we know, because we all have these active signal chats and whatnot. There are days when we know that ICE is on the move. And I don't want to send my child to the bus stop because I don't know what will happen. Because I've sat with too many parents who have said to me, my child's an American citizen, but he's big and brown, and they don't care if he's an American citizen. Like, you can send him with a passport. I actually had a conversation with a member of Congress, and I said to her, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I keep my kids safe in Massachusetts? Should I send him with my passport? And you know what she said? She's like, girl, please. They don't care about that passport. If he looks big and brown and they suspect him of something, they're going to snatch him right up. This is real. And this is why parents are making those decisions. And you know what? I don't blame them. If you cannot have the assurance that when you send your child out the door, that they're not going to come back to you. And frankly, if we're sending them to school, they should come back better than when we give them that kiss goodbye. Like, there are real reasons right now for parents to pause. So we deserve to have our elected officials saying, no, hold on, stop a minute. This is not going to work. And I'll tell you something, next week, we're going to have some hearings in Washington, D.C., because Kristi Noem, the former head of the Department of Homeland Security, has been fired. And there's a new nominee, Markwayne Mullin, who is a senator from Oklahoma. And you can bet that we're going to be marching right into his office, and we're going to go in front of the committee where all of the people responsible for confirming him are going to get him on the record and ask him the question, do you think it is appropriate to have children and educators cowering in their classrooms because they are worried about being snatched up, about not making it home? Again, I'm talking about school buses. I sat with mothers who told me they had to teach their children how to rinse their eyes of tear gas. What are we doing? Like, that's not, like, a couple of years ago, like, we were talking about gun violence and all these things. Now we are talking about teaching our kids life skills, like making sure you're not pepper sprayed when you're walking home from school. What are we doing, Jason?
It's heavy, and it's a hard pill to swallow. Now, I have to say this: phenomenal advocates. You've heard Carrie; they're in DC advocating. Christy is going to come on shortly. She's our national organizing director. We are hearing from people on the ground daily, and there is a loss of hope. And I'm very concerned about that because I still believe in humanity. And I know that Whitney was singing about my generation when she said she believes that the children are our future. But I believe that the children of today also deserve that promise. And they deserve each and every one of us, those who are listening, those who will watch this in the replay, they deserve all of us standing up for them. And most importantly, ensuring that we're centering kids and putting kids first in all of the things that we're doing.
Jason, I gotta say, like, I know that this is a tough pill to swallow, but I gotta say to everybody in the NPU family, nobody's coming to save us. We're gonna have to do this work. We're gonna have
That's
to
right.
get it done because we don't have the luxury of waiting. We don't have the luxury of hoping somebody's going to come along and do it because unfortunately, time and again, we have seen what happens when we are not in the mix. But we've also seen what happens when we are in the mix and what we're able to fight back, what we're able to win, what we're able to stop, what lawsuits we are able to file. We're doing all the things all the time. And it's a lot. I get it. And if you're tuning in and you're like, Carrie, it's 10 minutes to 7. Like, I'm trying to feed these kids and wash their butts. I haven't sat down all day yet. I got laundry to do. Like, and now you're hitting me with this. I get it. Please believe me that I get it. But if it's not us, who's it going to be? And all of our little human beings are looking at us. And I don't know about you guys, but I know I'm always thinking about, and Jason, you'll appreciate this because of all of the beautiful work that you do with grand families across Georgia, and it's so beautiful. But I always think about the fact that it's always been said to me, we're not going to be able to do everything, but it's our responsibility to do our piece. And I want to be able to look my grandbabies in the eye and know that I can tell them that Vavo fought. Vavo stood up for you. Vavo tried to make sure that the world was safe. And so when you came into the world, you didn't have to live in fear. And so that's keeping my eye on the prize right now.
Everyone, join me in thanking Carrie for these inspirational words. We needed this on this evening, and most importantly, being connected to everything that is happening in this country. The more we know, the more we can grow and the more we can do. So, Carrie, again, thank you so much for these powerful words this evening.
I really love y'all. I really do. And I'm going to be listening. Like, again, mom life. We got a championship basketball game tonight, but I'm going to be here in the comments. But I got these boys looking at me like, we better get out the door, mama. But
yes, and I hope that you guys get a victory because, we love basketball. Yes. Carrie, thank you again, and good luck to the boys this evening. Everyone, again, join me in thanking our national president, Christy Marino, my amazing teammate. I call her my honorary first cousin, and baby, let me tell you, she made it up to a first cousin. So you know that she is definitely about the business of children and families. Christy, I'm going to pass it over to you to take us into this conversation. We have such phenomenal leaders joining us this evening. So, Christy, take it away.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Carrie. We, NPU, we have these real conversations, right? We as parents and caregivers are being attacked on all fronts. And when people ask me why I do what I do, my answer is very simple and very similar to what Carrie was saying, which is I am not okay with the world as it is. And I'm not okay with that being the world that my children are growing up in. And so today I am very excited to have such phenomenal leaders, advocates, organizers, policy analysts, and just people fighting and defending our families across the nation. And I would love to welcome my friends Priya Pandey, Alyssa Minoff, Ashley Manning, and Nehemiah Frank here to the screen. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. I know Many of us are parents. We have a lot going on. We've been hosting coalition meetings because we know that the way of moving things forward is doing it together. And NPU is part of so many relationships and coalitions and alliances fighting for our families day in and day out, 24/7, because we are not okay with the world as it is for our children and for generations to come. And so I would love it if we can just take a turn and introduce yourselves. I would love to read your bios, but you guys are such incredible people that would take a whole hour. So if you can unmute yourself and just take turns and introduce yourself, who you represent, what work you're doing, and what brings you to this conversation tonight. Priya, would you like to start?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. It's wonderful to be in community with so many parents this evening. So my name is Priya Pandey, she, her pronouns. I'm currently a policy analyst at the Center for Law and Social Policy. We are an anti-poverty think tank based in Washington, D.C., with the goal to improve the lives of low-income families across the country. And I currently work on our immigration and immigrant families team, and I support a lot of our work on the intersection of child well-being and immigration. And I also help co-lead our Children Thrive Action Network, which is a coalition of advocates and allies working to center children in mixed status families.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you.
And hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Wonderful to be in this group talking about really the issues that are most important to families today. My name is Elisa Minoff. I work at the Center for the Study of Social Policy, based in Washington, D.C. We do a lot of work to make sure that families have what they need to meet their basic needs every day. I'm the Director of Economic Security at CSSP, and we work really closely with parents, and both in close partnership with parents to advance policies that promote economic security and well-being. And we also do a lot of research where we learn from lots of parents about their economic lives and the difficulties they're having making ends meet and putting food on the table, and working together to think about what policies can support them. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nehemiah Frank, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Black Wall Street Times. It's so nice to be here in community with you. We're based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we speak to the nation and to the world. We lift the voices of people of color and parents through the Black Wall Street Times, whether that's op-eds or joining in the fight for parents and families with organizations like the National Parents Union. So happy to be here today.
Thank you, Nehemiah.
Howdy, everyone. My name is Ashley Manning. I'm the founder and CEO of Blue Synergy Holistics. I'm also a Navy veteran, holistic nutrition practitioner, and community advocate. My work it supports intergenerational families, and it looks at the connection between food, stress, trauma, and how those factors shape both health and educational outcomes. I am a founding board member of Hen Heart Soul Project, and I contribute heavily as a board member in the advocacy work with Lily's Foundation for Change. And as a mother of 3 sons and someone who has navigated these systems personally and professionally, I'm passionate about helping families access practical tools that support stability, nourishment, and long-term community health.
Thank you, Ashley. And Priya, we're going to start with you. NPU and CLASP, as well as CTAN, we had wonderful collaboration with CTAN on a love letter to immigrant families, and we've been working in coalition with CLASP. Not alone. We can't do this work alone, right? But we have been defending and advocating for the safety and stability of modern American families. And we, as I said initially, we're being attacked from all fronts. This is our attacks on our physical health, our mental health, our community health, our financial well-being. And so I would like to start with this question, Priya. With an overwhelming majority of parents, 75% of them, NPU polled parents across the nation, as Carrie mentioned, saying we don't want ICE near our schools. We don't want immigration attacks in our places of worship and our places of care, hospitals, clinics, our pediatricians' offices. What are we doing as coalitions to defend and protect families? And what other things are we hearing coming directly from this administration that are hurting the stability of our families?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And I think the concern that we're seeing right now around ICE enforcement and the increased presence that we see of immigration agents in our community is very real. And it really has to do with, the rollback of protections that we've seen and a very aggressive mass deportation plan that's also backed by unprecedented levels of funding increases for ICE and CBP. And so communities across the country have experienced increasingly violent and indiscriminate immigration rates that have destabilized communities. And we're seeing, deportation campaigns that are leading to a number of parents of minor children getting separated, the expansion of immigration detention, the reopening of family detention camps, and a huge chilling effect that's really leading to drops in attendance in childcare centers and schools across the country. So we are seeing the administration increase enforcement work both in the interior in American cities and also at the border to make it increasingly difficult for people to come into the country. Now, the second thing that we're seeing the administration also do is attack all other forms of citizenship status. So we're currently seeing the administration attack birthright citizenship, and it is currently being litigated out in the courts right now. And birthright citizenship is so important to child well-being because being, born and being a U.S. citizen entitles these kids to so many critical benefit programs that are so important for their well-being and, just making sure that children have everything that they need to succeed later on in life. And taking away birthright citizenship, we would see every child would get harmed, not just those that are targeted by the order. We would see children's health and well-being suffer for life. Many kids could potentially be rendered stateless with nowhere to go. And so the administration's goal is to not just attack people that are undocumented in this country, but also to create more undocumented people by undermining those legal statuses and those programs like birthright citizenship or temporary protected status, which is a status given to individuals when it's unsafe for them to return to their home countries. They're given TPS so that they may safely work and live in the United States. And so the administration has been attacking immigrants on enforcement, citizenship status, and we're also seeing attacks on access to benefits as well. So recently, the Department of Housing and Urban Development released a proposed rule that would now take away access to housing vouchers, public housing, and rental assistance programs for mixed status families. So if there is someone in the family who has a status that is not eligible for federal housing assistance, or they themselves are undocumented, regardless of what, if other people in the household are eligible for those benefit programs, now the whole family is no longer eligible. So we're seeing the administration attack access to benefits. We're seeing this egregious deportation campaign. And so it is incredibly concerning and troubling. But I also want to remind people that even though we don't have the formal policies in place, such as the protected areas policy, so this was a policy that has existed for over 30 years in some shape or form with historic bipartisan support that basically prohibited immigration enforcement from taking place in schools, churches, hospitals, and other places that families and children gather. And it was really designed with this understanding that immigration enforcement should not prevent families from accessing essential services. And this was a policy that the Trump administration moved to get rid of in day one. And it was unfortunately very easy to do because it's just guidance at the Department of Homeland Security. So it's very easy for a new administration to come in and take this policy away. And now without this formal policy in place, now ICE agents are only required to have verbal or written permission from their supervisor to carry out enforcement actions in these former protected areas or use their common sense in these situations. And the reason why this is so dangerous and so concerning and contributing to the trend that we see is because one agent's common sense is very different from another, and we are seeing due process and individual rights being undermined in real time because of this. Now, the important thing I want to emphasize is that even though we do not have this formal policy in place, you still have rights. The US Constitution applies to everyone, regardless of immigration status, regardless of where you were born. And there are two really key amendments that I want to talk about in the Constitution that keep us safe, keep our families safe, and keep our children safe. And those are the Fourth and Fifth Amendment in the Constitution. So the Fourth Amendment is basically your reasonable expectation to privacy. People cannot come and enter and search your home without a proper and valid judicial warrant. And then you have your Fifth Amendment rights, which basically allow you to exercise your right to remain silent if you are approached by law enforcement, so you don't have to talk to or cooperate with immigration agents in those situations. Now, the reason these two are very important is that this work has really shaped what we have been doing to respond in the moment to what we're seeing with the increase in immigration actions across the country. So CLASP has developed several resources to educate service providers on what they can do to keep themselves, keep their centers and facilities safe from immigration actions. And it's basically creating something called a safe spaces policy that is rooted in those Fourth Amendment rights and your reasonable expectations to privacy. So we have been advising service providers, home visitors, home-based providers on policies that they can create to make sure that their staff know what to do in the event that ICE shows up at their door. The second thing that we have been working with people on is, again, educating them on how to read a warrant. So ICE has very clearly not following the rule of law. They are very clearly violating people's rights. However, I still want to make sure that people know what those rights are and they're still educated on them, because we do not want fear to win here and we don't want people to feel overwhelmed. So education is so important. So we've been talking to people about how to read a judicial warrant versus an administrative warrant, knowing the difference and practicing it in real time and knowing what to say when ICE shows up at your door. Lastly, there have been so many incredible efforts throughout the country to respond to everything that's happening in this moment. So even though we don't have a federal protected areas policy in place, we have so many amazing state level bills that are very similar to the federal protected areas policy that direct state governments and attorney generals to issue guidance to courthouses, to schools, to childcare centers on what they can do to keep themselves safe, and also to tell ICE agents that they cannot conduct enforcement actions in those areas in that specific state. So we've been seeing incredible work happening at the state and local level. We're also seeing many state and local pushes to end something called 287G agreements. So 287G agreements are basically agreements made between local law enforcement and federal immigration agents that promote cooperation between local police and immigration, so local police can support ICE agents with their immigration enforcement work. Recently in Maryland, the state I'm currently in, we just worked to end 287G agreements, and that is so incredibly important because it undermines public safety when people don't feel safe to access public services, calling the police, calling the fire department, because they're nervous that doing something like that will potentially open them up to immigration enforcement actions, and it makes us overall feel so much unsafer. So we're seeing incredible efforts across the country at the state and local level to organize, make sure people know what their rights are, make sure people know what resources are out there and what information is out there. And even more importantly, to document everything that is happening right now. So telling the truth about, you know, what the reality is, what parents on the ground are experiencing, and what the impacts are, so that people don't try to rewrite this moment in the future and try to undermine what our families were going through and try to undermine the isolation and the withdrawal that immigrant families are dealing with as a result of these really punitive policies. So we have been, you know, working really hard at that level, and there's also work to be done at the federal level. So there is legislation in Congress called the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, which we are working with our colleagues on the Hill on to get some support, get that introduced, which would codify that protected areas policy. And so moving forward, it couldn't be as easily removed. And now we would have a federal policy to hold ICE officers accountable to. Now, lastly, I know I'm speaking to so many parents in the audience, and I know you all have so many concerns about how to talk to your children, how to validate their fears and understand what they're going through in this moment, while also trying to keep them plugged into everyday life, keeping them plugged into schools, keeping your immigrant neighbors plugged into essential services. So I know how incredibly challenging that is. And like Christy mentioned, we developed an incredible resource that provides you with developmentally appropriate ways to talk to children about what's happening. And also it has some very important safety planning resources at the end of the document on what families should do to prepare in case them or a loved one gets detained and deported, because that is a very real concern. And it is important to give people resources that they can use to prepare themselves so that their children are taken care of, their economic security is still preserved, and their dignity is still preserved. And lastly, CLASP has also developed a great resource for parents around something called the Detained Parents Directive. So this is an internal policy that DHS developed and ICE is required to follow when they arrest parents. And this is a policy that allows parents to make decisions at the point of arrest on what happens to their child. And it also allows them to participate in child custody hearings, welfare hearings in the court system, be kept near their child, allowed visitation with their child, and make a decision on if they're unfortunately deported, do they want to bring their child with them and have the necessary time to make arrangements, or if they choose to leave their child with another caregiver in the United States. And again, we know that ICE does not respect people's rights. We know in this moment they are undermining due process, but it is still so important that everybody knows that you are still protected under the Constitution and there are still policies you can hold people accountable to. So our goal at the end of the day is to educate people, to address some of the very real fears, and just keep people connected to the vital services and the daily lives and all of the joy and the day-to-day, despite all the horrors that we're dealing with.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Priya. And as an organizer and an advocate, I always like to give calls to action. And I think what I'm hearing and distilling is families, we need to prepare. We need to know our rights. We need to be connected to our neighbors, to our communities. We need to contribute to the campaigns. NPU has a Protect Sensitive Locations campaign. You can find, our advocacy guide on our website. And so thank you so much, Priya, for everything you are doing with CLASP and with the Children Thrive Action Network. We're very grateful for all that you're doing with your team and with communities across the nation. Now, Alyssa, I want to go to you because, recently, our most recent poll, the National Parents Union, 43% of parents are telling us that their personal economic situation is getting worse, right? Housing costs, childcare. Let's not even talk about childcare. That's been a battle we've been fighting for years, it seems. Healthcare access. All of these financial pressures are stressing and creating so much anxiety on parents and caregivers that naturally our children are also breathing and absorbing, and they're very well connected. So tell us, Alyssa, why does it feel like we're working harder but falling further behind? Many of us are working 2 to 3 jobs. We know our educators, the majority of educators working 2 jobs. Lots of us as parents, single parent households are feeling the stress. A lot of families are kicked out of healthcare. What is going on? Why isn't there more support? How are all these tariffs and conflicts abroad hurting the economic stability and the economic progress of families?
Well, I think, what it comes down to is that raising children is expensive. Any parent knows this, and it's a constant worry. Researchers estimate that it costs about $300,000. The average family spends $300,000 raising a child from birth to age 18. We're parents are feeling the pinch because prices are going up, but wages aren't going up at the same rate, especially at the lower end of the income spectrum. And tariffs are contributing. We saw when tariffs were implemented last year, the prices of the typical family baby products went up by $400. And there's so these big ticket items, these things that parents are very aware of spending money on, those things are going up. Things like childcare and extracurricular activities and summer camps. And I think in moments like this right now, there's incredible uncertainty. We're in the midst of a war. We see the gas prices go up. I think just today, AAA said gas prices nationally were at $3.60, but I know that the pump around the corner from me is $4.35. And so I think under these circumstances, doing the job of a parent is incredibly hard, because even if you have a stable job, even if you're working 2 jobs, and feel pretty confident in maintaining those 2 jobs, you're not sure what the future brings. And so you're not able to necessarily plan for, can you afford summer camp this summer? Or can you take that vacation? Or can you have a birthday party for your kids? And I think what's most striking when I know this as a parent myself, but when I'm working with parents and talking to parents, is that so often we feel this stress and we try and hide it from our kids. I talked to one mom a few years ago who talked about how she would take her bills into the bathroom to read them, so that she could let all her feelings come over her and then compose herself and then go back out there sort of with a composed face for her children and not let her children see that stress. And the other thing I would just say is, there are policies that help. There are policies in place right now that can help. This is tax season. So many people are looking forward to a tax refund to help kind of lift some of that weight. And they're really important family tax credits, like the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit, that can provide really meaningful support at this time of year. But families really need that support year round. So I'll just talk about the child tax credit for a second. That's a really incredible support for families. Families can get up to $2,200 per child from the child tax credit. But there are 19 million kids in families who don't get that full $2,200 because their family's incomes are too low, because the credit is designed to phase in as your income increases. So families who need it most don't get the full credit. So that's just a basic failure in policy design. So for, right now, families can file their taxes. There are issues with filing taxes this tax season, as there often are, but there's new ones this year because the IRS isn't issuing or doesn't want to issue paper checks as refunds. So they're asking everyone to include their bank information to do direct deposit. For people who don't do that, the paper checks are being delayed. So file your taxes, try and include bank account information. And then I think it's really important to think about the future and think about policies we can put in place that would really better support families. We know right now the child tax credit is $2,200 once a year for families at most. But back during the pandemic, we saw the child tax credit expanded so that actually all families with low incomes or even families with no income could get the full credit. And it was delivered monthly. So families were receiving a $300 check if they had kids 0 to 5, and a $250 check a month if they had kids 6 to 17. So we know we can do more, and that when we do things like that, that stress and that burden that parents carry and trying to figure out how the math of their budget is going to work, it's really lifted. And I think, what it comes down to is that at the end of the day, parents just want the very, very best for their kids. And it is gutting when they can't do the things that they want to do for their kids. And so things like expanding the child tax credit, providing more cash support for families, making sure that food assistance is available for families, housing assistance, like Priya was just talking about, that needs to be available to all families who need it, regardless of immigration status. So there's a lot that we can do. We know it because we've done it better before. And it's really important for parents to step up and be part of this fight to expand these supports so that everyone really has what they need.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I was sharing with you a few days ago when we were connecting that NPU has been part of the work of the child tax credit expansion. We've been fighting for this for years. We are in a current lawsuit, right, because of the loss of benefits, because of data sharing between the IRS and I like. Economic stability, we care so much about it, right? That is part of our well-being. And so what I'm hearing is our call to action is, I know we are supporting a child tax credit workshop happening on March 24th. Check social media, sign up to NPU's newsletter. We're want to make sure that parents have the information they need to take advantage of this. But also what I'm hearing is that parents need to be part of influencing that policy. And I know that CCSP and the ABC coalition made up of parents are fighting for policies that make sure that our families, so well deserving for the work we're doing, for enriching society, for raising beautiful children, we need the support, and this needs to be a mutually beneficial system, right? So thank you so much, Alyssa. And now I'm going to turn these questions over to Nehemiah and Ashley. Nehemiah, I'm so happy to see you. Nehemiah is a founding member of the National Parents Union and also is an expert in media and communications and parent advocacy and so many more things. So I'm very grateful to have you here. And Ashley, you're all the things I aspire to be. And I'm just so happy that as a mom, as a healer, as an advocate, as a veteran, you have so much to contribute to this conversation. So my questions are for both of you. And I know you guys know each other, so I know you're gonna make this happen beautifully. So, parents or caregivers, we're anxious, we're worried about, I've mentioned it, the well-being in all fronts of our children and our families, right? And so when we are stressed and worries, trustworthy information is really hard to sift through, right? There's so much that is coming at us. Ashley, you and I were having a conversation this morning. Do we check the news? Do we not check the news? Do we look through our feed? Do we not look through our feed? We know our kids know what's going on, but we must be in control of that narrative too as parents, right? As the people who love our kids most, who want to make sure that they are healthy and that they feel protected. So how do we even talk to our kids about conflict, about war? How do we prepare our families emotionally and cognitively? I'm going to drop a lot of questions because I want you to take it from there. Parents are worried about a potential draft. Ashley, you and I were talking about this. What do we know? Like, I personally am terrified. I have teenagers, right? And historically, I don't have any service members in my family that I'm closely connected to. So I myself am worried about that. How can we tell the difference, Nehemiah, between facts, misinformation, fake news? What is going on in our feeds, in the news? How do we sift through it? And how, lastly, and I think if any of you want to jump on this one, how can parents make sure that our voices are heard in these public conversations that are actually shaping the narrative, that have the power to shape policy and practice and face those injustices and attacks that we are facing as families and as society? So take it away, Nehemiah and Ashley. Let's see what wisdom you can share.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Well, I guess the first thing Ashley and I can probably definitely address is the key facts around a draft. I remember having to sign up for the draft when I was 18. And let me tell you, that was something that I did not want to do at the time, but it was something that I had to do because I was a male in the United States. And so that is one of the facts that exist today. Most men in the U.S. must register between ages 18 and 25 for a possible draft, if there is a draft, right? And registration does not mean a draft is happening. It doesn't mean that you're going to be shipped off to war. I think that's something that's very, very important and could probably help your teenager have less anxiety around having to register for the draft. And then in the United States, we have an all voluntary military. So no one is forced to serve in the military. There is no active military draft right now. And Congress, the only way that there would be a draft in the United States is if Congress passed legislation and the president approved it. Now, we know that this current president has done a lot of things without congressional approval, but this is something that I don't believe that both parties would just allow to simply happen. Historically, drafts have occurred only during large-scale wars. During 9/11, there was a lot of folks that were concerned about that happening, and there was no draft. Technology is I want to say it's the gift, but it's also a burden on our society. But it is something that definitely keeps us from having to send so many young people to war. Ashley, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. So I am a generational service member, even pre-America. And I'm a mom of a service member. A draft the probability is extremely low. And every 4 years, somebody comes with the emotional, they hold you hostage with this emotionalism, and everybody gets hung up in it. And I need you all to stop. Please stop, because they are thriving off of your emotions. This media and these people pushing these narratives, stop, please, because it's probably not going to happen ever. As Nehemiah stated, Congress has to activate it. The president has to sign it into law. And yes, this current administration has done a lot of wild things that we're like, wait a minute. However, selective service system, it's going to take months and months of setup. And if activated, it has to be selective. So they are not getting everybody. So people, we have an all-volunteer force since 1973. We have enough bodies. Even though we keep recruiting, there's enough bodies and there's enough people who want to serve for whatever reason. And we're in this modern technological phase where we don't need as many bodies. I think the only way we would see anything of that type is if something happened on our soil. But then again, we have National Guards, we have militias, we have veterans groups who will step up to do these things. So just your average Joe at 18 or whatever, they're not going to call you. So please stop sharing those memes and saying that this is going to happen, because it's not. About draft bills and things of that nature, there has to be routine updates. There has to be discussions surrounding registration of women as well, because once again, we are in this new phase, and there were some women who said, I want to do it all. So now we all have to do it all, even if that's not what all of us want. So please, the algorithms reward the people for these emotional reactions. Please stop allowing these algorithms to harvest your energy, okay? Just be calm. Check your sources. Please check and see if it is a policy, if it's a discussion, or if it's law. And then you need to have it confirmed by multiple credible outlets. You can't just be saying, oh, this person said it, or I read it on this particular website. And these websites have nothing to do with the government. So if it's not coming from Congress, if the selective service system hasn't issued anything, and as wild as our Department of Defense has been, if it hasn't come from them, it's not real. So your stress hormones, and I have families and peers and neighbors always, I'm just really stressed. I'm stressed. Stop, please. Breathe deeply, because this is not a factor for us. And the more that adults stress out about things we cannot control, I can't control what happens in a conflict. I can't control that.
And the kids are processing that differently too.
Yeah, what can we control in this moment? Because our children are watching.
Right.
And I've been in the classroom, I've been an instructor, and I've had children come to me say, Miss Manning, Miss Manning, Miss Manning, and I've had to calm them down. I did more emotional regulation than sometimes teaching because people just were chaotic emotionally. So it's important that adults stop, like breathe, center themselves, learn how to be emotionally stable. And I know that's difficult because there's so much going on in the world.
Yeah.
We're working a lot. We have a lot on our plates. We still need to feed our babies. We need to ensure that they have what they need. The education, we have ICE, we have all these different factors, but we are their leaders. These children are watching our behaviors. They're watching us more than they're listening. So if we are out here in shambles beyond about media, false media, what are our children going to do?
And if I can just add to that too, because at the top of the program, Carrie had mentioned about what took place. I believe it was in New Jersey, where ICE actually showed up to the bus stop. And when I tell you, I was furious that day. I was so angry. I think I had interviewed some parents who are part of NPU that had some after school programs that were focused on protecting kids and educating them about ICE and their constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And we published that in the Black Wall Street Times back at the beginning of the beginning of the school year. But when it comes to children, they see everything, they hear everything. They're going to process it differently depending on their age. So if they're under the age of 10 years old, I used to be a fifth grade teacher, middle school teacher. I would say just keep it simple and brief with them. Focus on safety and reassurance. Safety and reassurance. Safety and reassurance. Let them know that they're safe, and limit exposure to graphic news or repeated media coverage. I would never show our twins what happened at the bus stop. You know, they're Black children, so they're less likely going to have to deal with the ICE situation. Now, if they're in Springfield, or in Ohio, you know, and they're a Haitian kid, that might be a different experience for them. But I know that, you know, where we live geographically, I would not show them something like that. I don't think that they really need to be exposed to that. Now, if the algorithms are showing us a lot of what's happening, you better believe that it's showing your kids that.
Yeah.
You know, we just saw Facebook and Meta have to sit down and testify before Congress about how the algorithms are affecting teenagers. So this is something that I would definitely say that parents definitely need to keep a pulse check on. Very, very important, so you can know what's going on with your kids. And you can just say something like, sometimes, you know, countries disagree and it can lead to fighting, but there are many people working very hard to keep everyone safe. And this is regarding what's happening in Iran. Kids know what's happening in Gaza. They know what's happening in Iran. You cannot hide that from them. They know what's going on, you know, and so you have to be able to have a conversation with them. Otherwise, their anxieties are going to run wild, just like our anxieties are running wild over it, right? Encourage questions and dialogue. Help them separate headlines from reality. Talk about the emotional impact of seeing constant news online. I just saw Aaron Parnes. I don't know if anyone follows him on Instagram. Big media guy. Today was the first day that I heard him say that if you need to take a pause, right? And it's okay for you to take a pause. That is perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I remember in the early 2000s, I was stationed in San Diego, and I was looking at studies where they were saying constant news exposure creates depression and anxiety. So people now have clinical diagnoses because of this constant news. So these children are enduring this, and then they're having this at school, and these are discussions that are just everywhere. We really have to consider these babies. Is it something they have to see all the time? And encourage, and as Nehemiah stated, we need to encourage them to get off of these things and find other ways of entertainment. And I also know, as a mom with my 10-year-old, I who said it? When was it said?
That's right.
Does it make sense? Like, for little ones, you need to ask those questions. Does that make sense? And also let them know that the difference between a war, which Congress can only call, in conflicts. We are constantly in conflicts for various reasons. At any given time, we're in 3 to 10 conflicts a year. There are things that you all have absolutely no idea about, and it's occurring for various reasons. So we need to also understand those aspects of our society, and whether we agree with different types of military operations or not, we have to learn these things. We have to learn things about our political system and be able to have those conversations with our children. My parents had us speaking about this in elementary. I was 6 years old having political conversations at our dinner table, or, us walking up and down the streets. We were doing this. So more parents, tired or not, you have to have these conversations with your children so they can be aware and they can go off and have a good time and be children. Because I encourage my sons, go be a child. You don't have to be concerned about that, baby. Let's have a conversation and let's move on, because you're a child. I need you to get out of the mindset of having to stress and fix things for adults when this is a situation that's not yours. And for parents, if they want to be involved, you can go to your local PTA. For middle and high school, it's PTSA. Join. I was a PTSA president. I was a member of PTA. I've done it all. Please join. They have so many different avenues for you to use your voice, learn things. You have community events. I know I live in Georgia, Clayton County. We have so many different types of events free where you can learn and you can grow. And even at the Capitol, whether you like these people or not, the Capitol is open for you to go and speak or learn about your system. But you have to get involved, tired or not. And as a mom, an unmarried mama of 3 boys at various stages, I have a 21-year-old, a 17, and a 10-year-old who do completely different activities. I'm exhausted, but I made it happen so that they could know what was going on in their community, and I could be aware of what was going on in my community. So more parents, you don't have to do all the things that I do or I have done, but it's important that you find your niche and you support that, so that your family has a voice and your children can learn about these voices and how to advocate for themselves.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Can I add one more last thing? I just want to make sure that we get this nice and tight before we end the call. I know there are certain states that are looking to pass legislation where they want to teach that January 6th was a peaceful protest. So it really comes down to reporting and commentary. So that's something that you really do need to also speak to your kids about so they can know the difference between that.
Thank you. Yes. No, keep it going. I'm just saying media literacy is so important.
Yes,
right?
It is. Yes. Media literacy
Critical
is very
thinking. Yes.
Opinion versus fact. And you can assume that your school is teaching this, right? Your school might be teaching that January 6th was a peaceful protest. Well, in another household, they would say that that was an insurrection, right? And so your child has to be able to analyze, have the ability to analyze and think for themselves. But you have to teach them how to get to that, how to get that skill set.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to all of you, because in the various spaces where you're working, where you're defending families, where you're also building, because I keep saying, we don't just fight, we also build. We want to see good policy. We want to see safe communities. We want to see education justice for our children. We have to think of the things that as parents we can control. And there's so much that we can control. And part of that is control how we use our voices productively to influence positive policy, to also fight back for the things that are hurting our families, to be informed and bring communities together, and to advocate for the things that we deserve, that we know we work so hard for, and that we know are actually going to bring stability, health, safety, and all the prosperity that our families so deserve. I'm very grateful to all of you. Jason, back to you to wrap this up. And so grateful to all of you who are watching. Please check us out. There's a lot of information. Check out these incredible organizations that are represented here. And Jason, thank you so much for hosting this conversation this evening. I'll give the mic to you.
Listen, Christy, this was phenomenal. And I have had so many parents, partners, the grandparents have been messaging me, Ashley. They are so proud of you and so thrilled to have seen your voice, as well as Nehemiah and our other. This was phenomenal. Lots of great information. Now, I have to say this, Christy, because a lot of people are looking at all of the moving pieces, and remember that our public schools are still under attack.
Yeah.
The last part of this conversation with Nehemiah, Ashley, and Christy around media literacy. It's my 21st year in education, and we had some former educators who also spoke. Please remember that teaching and learning is responsibility of the teacher. However, when we think about things like research, understanding media literacy, that job and responsibility is of the school librarian and media specialist. So remember that under the first Trump administration, they worked extremely hard to begin removing these positions from our schools.
Yeah.
So parents realize that when you have advocacy groups that are in partnership with NPU advocating for school counselors instead of school resource officers, having a school librarian and a school nurse, these things are important because they also help fill in the gaps for what our children need to know, especially in regards to what is real and what's not in our media. So Christy, Nehemiah, Ashley, thank you all for highlighting that and giving us the facts that we can walk away with. Now, Christy, I am asking everyone, share this conversation with parents, with caretakers, with other families that you are connected to. Even send them the YouTube link, because that is something that people can just let play. And guess what? You'll also get connected to other conversations that NPU has had to get information. I'm also going to encourage people to do this. Joining the National Parents Union is free. Moms for Liberty and other groups that are aligning with Project 2025, that are working to remove books, that are working to remove cursive writing, that are working to block universal pre-K, that are working to block increases in teacher salaries. They have hundreds of parents calling senators and representatives every day. So you know what we need? We need hundreds of parents and caretakers calling our senators and representatives, telling them that we want to ensure the policies that you're signing off on are putting all children first. So visit nationalparentsunion.org tomorrow when Christy and I talk and we meet with all of our phenomenal partners at our upcoming meetings on tomorrow. We want to hear that there were 30 people that signed up. We had 20 people from New Jersey, 50 people from Georgia, 13 people who joined from Oklahoma. I'm looking at all of the people who are on. We want to have people from New Mexico, okay? We want to have people from all areas of this country signing up to say, we are standing with you all to put kids first. So remember to go to nationalparentsunion.org. And I also have to say this, in our last 30 seconds, and thank you, team, for putting up that flag for me. In our last 30 seconds, I have to say, Christy and I are putting out information on TikTok. So even this evening, I'm going to give you my top 5 on the READ Act. And let me tell you, we are moving the needle with literacy and justice for all children in this country. And there is hope in that. So even if you feel like the sky is falling apart, I think our phenomenal speakers gave us a lot of hope with factual information. And guess what? Turn those frowns and that anxiety upside down into a smile. And guess what? Get on board with the READ Act and making sure that we're putting literacy first for all children. Christy, phenomenal job. To all of our guests, thank you all. And most importantly, for all of the parents and families across the country who have tuned in, thank you. And remember, we are on the move to put kids first. We look forward to the next conversation. And again, thank you all. Have a great evening.